Hello everybody, I'm KC and welcome to our edition of Let's Talk About, and welcome to the latest installment of To Infinity War and Beyond. And you know what we haven't done in a while? Introduce some new heroes. So let's journey into what may be the most unconventional Marvel movie yet, Guardians of the Galaxy. In a far-off galaxy, 5 galactic criminals come together for their own personal gain, but get wrapped up in something that could threaten the universe itself. So they decide to rise above their roles as losers and save the day as the Guardians of the Galaxy. Guardians of the Galaxy is a weird entry in the MCU. And by that I mean that it was a weird choice to adapt this particular property. Marvel lost a lot of the film rights to their most popular characters before the cinematic universe began, but they were still focusing on characters who people have probably heard of. But from what I understand, the Guardians are obscure even to comic book fans, so deciding to add them to the cinematic universe seemed odd at the time. No one really knew what to expect. What we got was a crazy romp through space with a group of misfits that were more crude, violent, and emotionally compromised than any Marvel hero so far. And the world they create is fleshed out and gritty, but still colorful and spectacular, even if they dump a lot on you about this part of the galaxy. A lot of people, including myself, had a lot of trouble figuring out what exactly was going on in this movie, and even most fans of the movie will say that the story is not the best part for this reason. But when I was watching this again, I realized that the pieces to the plot were all there, but they just dump a lot of stuff in your lap in the first 15 minutes and then get to the fun stuff. So unless you did watch it multiple times, it's easy to miss a world-building detail, especially with the Guardian shenanigans going on. Even if the overall plot is easy to grasp, establishing the connection to the world around them is pretty flimsy. But while telling the history of this world is kinda jumbled, creating the world visually is a whole other story. The sets are detailed and really look like they've been lived in by dozens of different species. The makeup work is extensive, but absolutely worth it, because any character who needed to look more alien, especially in the details of characters like Drax, looks spectacular, and the effects on Groot and Rocket are uncanny. With how much we use this technique nowadays, there's always some concern when putting CG characters in live-action environments. But with these two, I never once felt like I was looking at a really well done program. Both of them, especially Rocket, are brought to life so flawlessly, it evades description. And as I'm sure you all know, this movie is really freaking funny. The movie doesn't shy away from taking itself seriously despite what people may say, but first and foremost, this movie wants you to have a good time. The fact that the title sequence is Star-Lord dancing on a barren planet to come and get your lovin' makes that very clear. And it's one of the best opening scenes of anything ever. The humor fits perfectly for each character and can even be kinda crass by Marvel standards. That doesn't necessarily make the humor better, but there are some jokes and comments where you're asking yourself, this is a Marvel movie, right?
She has no idea. If I had a black light, the place would look like a Jackson Pollock painting.
Yeah, have fun explaining that joke, parents. But like pretty much every other Marvel movie thus far, it's the characters that really sell this one. It is pretty easy to compare this group to the Avengers, and they could have easily fallen into the tropes because they have such a typical team dynamic on the surface. The leader, the brains, the brawn, the heart, and the girl. But none of these characters are heroes. There isn't one of them who takes all the others under their wing and makes them better. They are all losers. And that's what I think made this movie as big as it was. One of the things that I think keeps Marvel movies fresh and interesting is tackling different obstacles that could come with the hero's journey. Iron Man's is responsibility, Captain America's is morality, this one is mainly redemption. All of the Guardians have made terrible mistakes. Some try to just live their lives looking out for only themselves, while others try to make up for those actions. But it's only when they reluctantly have to work together that they learn how to be the best they can be, even if they're still not perfect. Let's take a closer look at the team. Groot, played by Vin Diesel, is just a tough softie who looks out for those he considers his friends, and has the vocabulary skills of a Pokemon. As far as analyzing, that's about it. But it's easy to see why audiences loved him so much. If you can make people mourn a talking tree, you win in my book. Drax, played by Dave Bautista, is also not particularly complex. He wants vengeance against Thanos for the death of his family. It is good motivation, and just how far he's willing to go to accomplish that is a hurdle for him as a character, but if that was all there was to him, it could have been a problem. Thankfully, they also give him the trait of being completely literal, not understanding sarcasm or everyday sayings. It gives way to some very funny moments and saves them from being one note. Gamora, played by Zoe Saldana, is really interesting to me. She was taken from her homeworld and raised to be a living weapon by Thanos, who finally gets some lines and a name to non-comic fans, but rejects her father and spends the rest of the movie trying to keep one of the Infinity Stones away from him and his followers. But she still has to deal with her reputation and what she's done alongside Thanos, which brings some interesting conflict for her and her new team. There's a lot of potential with Gamora, and while there's definitely a connection between her and Peter, I'm glad they never officially become an item. I'm not against it, but they're both unstable emotional wrecks. Now's not the time for bigger commitments. Rocket, played by Bradley Cooper, also known as everyone's favorite character, is presumably an escaped genetic experiment who's now trying to get by as a bounty hunter to make a quick buck. But he's also a jack of all trades, being expert in piloting, engineering, hacking, and weaponry. Lots and lots and lots of weaponry. He kind of makes me think of Stitch if he'd never landed on Earth. And curse more.
Bunch of jackasses.
On top of getting the best lines, having a cool and kind of adorable design, and Bradley Cooper's amazing voiceover work, seriously, I cannot tell it's him. Rocket is probably the most emotionally unstable of the group, and that's really saying something. He acts cool, but takes a lot of things really personally. You wouldn't expect the gun-shooting raccoon to have moments that could make you tear up, but that's the world we live in now. And finally, our leader, Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, played by Chris Pratt. Peter was abducted from Earth by the Ravagers when he was 12 years old after his mother died, and has since been living as a sort of space pirate. He's got some skills, but he's also kind of a spaz. And even though he's been living among aliens most of his life, he's still very human. Emotionally, biologically, he's only half human, but that's for the next movie. The first thing we see in the movie is him rejecting his mother's last wish because he can't handle that loss. And it's clear just how much he loved her and how much that decision haunts him just from something as simple as having the Walkman she gave him be his most prized possession. And the combination of awkward and broken and kind of badass was the perfect blend for Chris Pratt to pull off. His transformation from a greedy loner to a semi-compassionate hero is probably the most satisfying in the movie. And on top of the already stellar main cast, this movie has an amazing and massive supporting cast. Michael Rooker, Karen Gillan, Glenn Close, John C. Reilly, Benicio del Toro, that guy who was Black Panther before Chadwick Boseman, and, oh yeah, this movie had a villain, I guess. Ronan the Conqueror, played by Lee Pace, honestly doesn't leave much of an impression. I'd consider him a threat since he effortlessly killed someone that intimidated Loki and is one of only 2 villains so far to wield an Infinity Stone, but I think because he doesn't really do anything that impacts our heroes until over halfway through, that makes him one of the weaker villains. At least Malekith killed Thor's mother during his first attack. That and his whole reason for being in the movie is in that info dump we talked about earlier. The makeup is still pretty cool, and Lee Pace does fine with what they give him, but there really isn't much to care about with this guy. But as cool as it was to see the Guardians harness the power of the Infinity Stone together, I kinda wish they ended with a dance-off. It would have made no sense, but it would have been amazing. You know you wanted to see that. Overall, Guardians of the Galaxy is insane, and that's what's so great about it. While I don't think I loved it as much as everyone else did, I admire just how much they made this premise work. I never thought I'd get so invested in a franchise with a sentient tree and a talking raccoon packing heat, but here we are. It's really nice to see successful films like this and the Lego movies show studios that you can still make an absurd comedy without sacrificing emotional investment and development. And it fits really well with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, being connected more to things like Thanos and the Infinity Stones than even the main Avengers. And they do an excellent job of both expanding on this world and integrating the Guardians into it without having to mention the Avengers at all. And because of that, I am really looking forward to their part in the Infinity War. But we've got a lot of adventures to get through before then, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
I know you